ተረጋጋ። እስካሁን ቆይታው ሊከብድ ነው።
The U.S. Supreme Court has been hearing arguments
outside in the room while the justices were hearing arguments over his executive order to end birthright citizenship for the children of migrants in the country without documentation or people visiting.
Unrestricted birthright citizenship contradicts the practice of the overwhelming majority of modern nations. It demeans the priceless and profound gift of American citizenship. It operates as a powerful pull factor for illegal immigration and rewards illegal aliens who not only violate the immigration laws but also jump in front of those who follow the rules.
After court, the president took to social media, posting, "We are the only country in the world stupid enough to allow birthright citizenship." That is actually not true. This map shows more than 30 other countries with birthright citizenship, including many to keep universal birthright citizenship, expressed optimism.
I am confident that the court is going to turn back this president's effort to radically rewrite our 14th Amendment rule of birthright citizenship.
Protesters will likely be back when the court announces that it's made a decision, but that's not going to happen very soon, at earliest likely in June. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera at the Supreme Court.
Ano?
Al Jazeera at the Supreme Court.
Takotas.
Al Jazeera at the Supreme Court.
a magnitude 7.4 undersea earthquake has been in northern Indonesia. Several hospitals and buildings were damaged in Manado City. Tsunami warnings issued in parts of Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia due to a lack of fuel needed to plough. And plant for their next harvest. They say the current crops are unable to reach markets because of a fuel blockade imposed by the US in January. Our Latin America editor, Lucia Newman, reports from Key Vican.
At a food factory in the Cuban municipality of Quivican, tons of once juicy tomatoes are rotting away.
These tomatoes have been here for too many days without being processed. They're normally turned into tomato paste in 24 hours after they arrive. But because of the long-term power cuts, we can't finish processing.
These tomatoes were about to be cleaned and peeled when the belt stopped last night. Mr. Martinez tells me that they're losing 80% of their production. With only 4 hours of power a day, they do what they can. They also don't have petrol to deliver to hospitals, schools, or supermarkets. Nearby, Martin says he lost his sugarcane crop, which has dried up because he had no fuel to cut it in time. These farmers are rushing to harvest their garlic crop, but they're afraid they'll be unable to take it to market. The same applies to plantains, manioc, and other staples. The U.S. fuel blockade to Cuba's state sector is turning what was already an agricultural crisis into a calamity. Fifth-generation farmer Dion Figueroa says he won't be able to plant a new harvest.
It's not possible. There's no fuel for tractors. That means in a few months, people won't have anything left to eat. Nothing which grows on this land.
Before the revolution, Cuba was the world's largest producer of sugarcane and sugar. Now, this sugar mill, like so many others around the country, is paralyzed. It's closed 5 years ago, in fact. And this is an indication of the crisis that the agricultural sector in this country has been enduring for decades.
The nearby agricultural cooperative blames it on lack of investment from the state.
We have manpower, we have finance, but we have no machinery, seeds, fertilizers, or fumigation. Now, private farmers are allowed to import all that, but in dollars. How can they sell to a population that earns in local currency?
Paradoxically, the government's tight controls over every sector of the economy are at last being relaxed. But it's impossible to gauge their effectiveness as long as Cuba is being deprived of the fuel it needs to survive. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Quivican, Cuba.
The UN has formally recognized the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. The move has resonated in countries across the world, including in Brazil, the last country in the Americas to abolish slavery. But it's also a legacy that's been ignored. Monica Yanakia reports from Rio de Janeiro.
In central Rio de Janeiro, 9 metal silhouettes stand in the shape of the African continent. A memorial to the 12 million people taken from Africa and sold into slavery. But for many here, recognition of the gravest crime against humanity comes late.
This global order prevailed for over 400 years.
Brazil received nearly half of all enslaved Africans, and Rio, once the largest slave port in the world, played a central role.
Out of every 5 Africans shipped to Brazil, 1 came through Rio.
Yet some
came through Rio.
Yet some of the clearest evidence of that system remained hidden for centuries. In 1996, construction workers uncovered a mass grave while renovating the home of Mercedes Guimarães.
There are at least 40,000 bodies under our feet. Most were children and teenagers who died on arrival and were dumped here.
She turned her home into a research institute, a site of memory, built largely without state support. For 3 decades, her family has worked with archaeologists and historians to identify the remains, relying on fragments of historical records.
The registers show the ships, the owners, even the brands used to mark the human beings as property, but not their names.
Brazil was the last country in the Americas to abolish slavery. Less than 140 years later, its legacy remains deeply unequal. More than half the population is of African descent, yet disparities in income, housing, and opportunity persist. I'm in Morro da Providência, Brazil's first favela or slum. It was built by enslaved people as soon as they were set free, but had nowhere to go, no land, no jobs. More than a century later,
From alongside her date.
Wait, good way or not?
Finds daily life. Monica Yanakiv, Al Jazeera, Rio de Janeiro.
4 astronauts have blocked the moon.
To prove the journey can be practical for humans and eventually can land people on the moon again, a goal China is also pursuing. Artemis is a U.S. project with international support. Europe, Japan, and the United Arab Emirates are all involved. Canada built a robotic arm and gave it an astronaut. The moon holds few guaranteed resources or security advantages. It is a possible source for a fuel that could drive future nuclear power, but it could be a stepping stone to explore the solar system. The moon has always been a distant prize. The Soviet Union took the first photo of it from space. The Union took the first photo of it from space. The Union took the first photo of it from space in 1959. And then in the late 1960s, the United States and the Soviet Union raced to land their robots and put their satellites into its orbit. But all of that was just the beginning. Over 4 wild years, 12 humans bounced and drove across its surface. And then the moon was quiet for decades, until the early 2000s, when a new space race kicked off. Major powers sent more probes. China landed 6 and sent pieces of the moon back to Earth. And now, private companies are getting there too. 70 years of lunar exploration, roughly divided into 2 chapters. Awesome. The U.S. space agency NASA has had a tumultuous year. The White House Budget Office proposed major cuts, but the Congress voted to maintain funding. March, Administrator Jared Isaacman promised to build a U.S. moon base within the next 7 years for $20 billion. Said the Pentagon wanted $200 billion to fund the Iran war.
The vehicle's ready, the system is ready, the crew is ready, and behind this.